Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing on a Saturday afternoon? Hopefully everyone was good to their moms. It is Mother's Day weekend. If this is your reminder, you can go to the grocery store and buy flowers right after this. We're very excited for you for that. But we want to welcome you to Multifamily Masters. Now, I do want to preface, this is not a polygamy event. When we say multifamilies, we don't mean multiple families. We are talking about real estate multifamilies. So just to put that on the radar, if you're here for a different reason, I'm sorry, you can silently exit and we won't judge you. But my name's Andrew Rasha. I've been with ATB Financial for the past several years. Last year alone, I touched $150 million in real estate, so I'm very excited about this event. And we have our founding father of Central Alberta Real Estate Investor Network, Bryce Kander. Bryce, you just hit 15 years in real estate, which is pretty incredible. What would be your number one piece of advice to someone in this room?
Every house that you move into, you can buy for 5% down. And now you can buy multifamily for 5% down.
Which is pretty incredible. So we're going to be talking all about multifamily today. We have some incredible guest speakers that are with us, and they're going to be sharing strategies regarding multifamily investing. Our goal is to provide actionable knowledge and that connects you with professionals. And so one of the things before we dive into the speakers is I want to give a bit of a recommendation. Now, as you're going to be hearing lots of information, there's going to be tons of things poured at you. And just try to grasp onto one thing. It doesn't matter what that one thing is. It's probably going to be different than what your neighbors are. But there's going to be something that kind of speaks. You got to get that butterflies, tingly feeling. You might feel like you're on a first date. Probably won't feel that way. But something that speaks to you. And whatever that is, write that down. Make sure that you tell someone afterwards. Maybe you're going to share it on social media. But then actually take the steps to action it throughout the next week. Whatever that one thing is, try to figure out a way that you can put action to it within the week so it actually sticks. So with that said, let's introduce our first speaker.
So we have Shane, and Shane initially started in mobile home parks, but in 2022, he moved to Alberta with a focus on multifamily. His background is in farming, which shows his work ethic. Now he has almost 400 units, $70 million worth of assets under management. He is excess asset management. So please welcome up Shane.
Thank you. Are we on? There we go. First, I want to thank you for putting on the event. Events like this, they take a lot more time and effort than I think people realize. And for sure in smaller communities, you guys need people like him to be putting these on. And anything you can do to kind of support him back, use his business or share his content, whatever you can do so he sees the value in that. I'll also say, they always say that you save the best for the last, and I'm going first, so please lower the expectations here. I was thinking about the other day what I was going to talk about or what I was going to bring today, and kind of what you touched on, the one thing that I learned. I thought back to the first time I ever went to a conference, and I was born and raised in northern Manitoba, a community much smaller than this. We were 4,000 people. Inside of that, I was raised Oldham Mennonites. We had a couple hundred people in our community. We had our own school system, and it was no TV, no radio, nothing like that, right? And so I never met a lot of successful people or been around them. So I kind of built this idea of why they got successful and we hadn't. And I always thought they probably had, something given to them, or they were really well educated. I wasn't. My entire family went to grade 9, and I went up to high school. But anyway, I go down to this conference, and the other thing I guess I thought was that you'd meet them, and right away you think like, man, this guy has it. He's smart. He has something that everybody else doesn't. Figure out complex problems or come up with good ideas. And I went to the conference, and the first day I noticed right away, I'm a hand talker, so the mic's a little hard here. The first thing I noticed is nobody leaned on their education, and all of them had a worse story than I did starting out. And I guess partway through the second day, this lady's talking, and she'd exited her company for around $1 billion. And as she's talking, I just thought, I've met people every bit as smart as her. She doesn't seem to be crazy smart or anything like that. And the next guy gets up and very similar. I just thought, I don't think he's that much more intelligent than anybody else. And it really changed my perspective, my life. I went home, I redid all my goals for my business and my life. And I really believe that all they had was they had a good idea, they put a plan in place, and they just worked hard for 10 years. And that was something that excited for 20 years. But I was like, that excited me. So I'm like, I grew up on a farm. Hard work I loved it. I always thought I could outwork anybody over a period of time, right? That was exciting for me. So that changed my life in a really positive way. So I guess today we're going to talk about real estate. I had asked Bryce when he initially asked me kind of what the topic was or what he wanted me to talk about. And he said just big picture, right? Why we're excited about real estate, why we like it. And that's what I like talking about. I like talking about the upside more than the downside for sure. And the other thing is just, I guess, maybe some of you will have the same thought where it's like, there's nothing special in real estate. It's an old business. The people that have done it and become successful, they didn't have anything crazy, right? We're closing on some property here. In about 2 months, we'll be over 100 million. And we did that in about 5 years. And that I didn't have any start. I'm not super smart or educated or anything like that. So we're going to talk about, I guess that. The first thing, we'll get into why I like real estate so much and why I truly believe it's one of the few asset classes that regular people can get invested in and can really get ahead. And the first thing, you need it in any investment, but it's supply and demand. Like we hear about the housing crisis in Canada all the time. And I don't know if people truly understand how bad it is or why we've gotten to this point, right? As a country, we build about 220 to 250,000 homes a year, units of housing a year, right? And the government, like the last election, it was a hot topic, and every politician had the answer. They were going to fix it. They were going to double the amount of housing we built, right? I can't get there. I can't get my head to how we can do that on so many levels. We built the same amount of houses in 1980 that we built today. We had half the population with none of the immigration that we have. I don't see how we can get there. We have a construction industry where there's a huge portion of it is getting close to retirement. Just to backfill those jobs, we need a ton of people coming in. To double it, we need double. We don't have the people. Land, we live in a huge country. Land should never be an issue. You look around, there's land everywhere. But you talk to developers, I'm from Edmonton, so specifically there. The last year, they could have sold way more homes than they did, but they couldn't get the land. So COVID happened, it slowed down land development just for a slight amount of time. And we're seeing the repercussions of that now. And we live in a country where we can't develop land all year, and we have permits and all these things. So we have labor, we have land. And I can't get my head there. We have, there's a guy, his name's Gregory Craig, he wrote a book on the 10 things that we could do to fix Canada's housing market. And he said if we do all 10 of these, in 10 years we would start to see an easing in the housing market, and in 20 years we would get back to a balanced market. The reality is we're not going to do all 10, even if the government could and they decided to do it. We have a 4-year election cycle, so to put a 10 or 20-year plan in place, it's not going to happen, and they're not going to follow through with it. And they make all these other promises. Carney came out the other day and said we're going to lower temporary immigration from 5% of the population to 3% by 2027. But if you do the math on that, if we grow by a few million people in the next couple of years, the number barely changes. And again, we've never meaningfully been able to bring on more supply. I don't think we're going to be able to do it. We definitely, unless I'm proven wrong and some new technology comes out, I don't think we're going to get to 500,000 homes a year anytime soon. So supply and demand, it's a huge one. That's my number one. The other thing would be the debt and then the inflation hedge. So that we're going to have some ladies talk about debt later, and I'm sure they'll go into much more detail. But the beauty of it is, you have an asset where the bank's going to lend you 95%, right? They won't lend you that with a 50-year AM. So go to the bank and try to get them to give you that loan to buy their own bank stock, right? Or any other asset. They're not going to do it. But here, they believe in real estate, right? They believe in multifamily, and they're basically telling the people, we'll take this back at 95 cents, and we're happy to do it, right? And that's an insured loan. CMHC is taking some of the risk. But I think just the faith that they have in it goes a long ways. I think it should show you that they have faith in it. And that type of leverage can absolutely explode your return, right? And it can be dangerous, and there can be all the downside risk, and you have to know what you're doing. But if you can put 5% down on a piece of property, it goes up 10%, you make 200% on your money. You do that a couple of years, even at 4%, you're having like penny stock returns without the risk. And you still have that asset, and it's cash flowing, you're paying the mortgage down. So I think it can be, I think the leverage component, you have to understand the risk, because it's definitely there, and I think people are over leveraging. but it can really explode your returns. And where it works so good and people usually don't talk about is hard assets, real estate particularly, they're an inflation hedge, right? So if you're able to take 95% of the bank's money and buy an asset at today's value, but you're able to pay the bank back with a deflating dollar. So every year that you pay the bank back, the dollar is worth less and less than it was when you bought the asset. So the asset over time, not every year, is going to outpace inflation on the upside. Rents are going to go up, and you're able to pay the bank back on the downside. So if you take a 50-year loan like you can get, in 1975, the value of $100, what do you think that buys you today? Or what it comes? Yeah, so it's 600. So it's 6 times different, right? The same basket of goods. So you imagine you run that loan out, you're paying the bank back almost nothing. It's garbage. It's just, it's money that's been deflated away. But your asset's down the other, and you can make your money in that spread, right? There's a lot of money to be made there. So you have the inflation hedge, you have the debt, and the other thing I'll touch on, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there's so many tax advantages to real estate, and you have to structure it right and know what you're doing. So use a tax attorney or an accountant. But I mean, with our fund, the way we structured it, we pay out distributions. We paid out every single month for 5 years. Our investors have never had to pay taxes yet because we pay out return on capital first, and then we have depreciation inside the partnership to eat up the income. So there's so many things like that you can do. So your money can truly grow without the burden of taxes. If you're paying 30% tax a year and trying to reinvest that and grow it, it's a push, it's a struggle, it's hard to do it. When your money can grow, not tax-free, but tax-deferred for 10 years, that you can get real compounding there, and it can really go. So those are the reasons why I like it, why I'm passionate about it, and I believe everyone should invest in it. And now I'll kind of go over how we got to where we are. People always ask how to get started or how to scale. And the reality is that there's no right path. I don't think there's any perfect path to do it. I know people that, as soon as his daughter was born, this guy bought a house, he accelerated the payments by $300, and he said, I'm going to pay that loan off in 18 years, pay for my kids' college. And so at the end of the 18 years, they paid $500,000 for the house, it's probably worth $700,000. He has this house, he can give his daughter, she can sell it, she can take that money, or she can keep it and get a couple $1,000 a month rent. That's life-changing. You can't get that if you put the same $300 into a free education account. It's not going to be $700,000, right? So that's a way to do it. That's one deal that changed their life. You can do, there's guys I know that buy 2, they double every year. They buy 1 unit, 2 units, 4 units, and then every time you take that step, it's not that scary because you've already bought, something similar size, and they get up to where they're buying 100-unit properties, and you obviously can't go forever, but it grows a nice portfolio. So there's no right or wrong way. And so for me, I started the first time I ever got involved at all in real estate or even thought about it. We bought our first house. It was $135,000. We put a little bit of money into it, and I remember thinking, the realtor told us it's probably worth about $20,000 more today. And I remember thinking, that's real money. Like I was farming at the time, and I was like, I can do that once a year for 10 years, and I can use that money to buy a long-term rental. And I thought if I could have 10 units in 10 years, that's like, for where I was at the time, that was going to be it. Like I was super pumped. And luckily, well, not, I don't know, luckily, but before I got going on it, I had read an article in Forbes called Mobile Home Park Millionaires, and it was about these funds buying parks up all across North America. And I was like, the business model made sense. You're just buying the land. You don't have as much headache. And I just by fate, the one in our town went up for sale. And I remember getting the numbers on it, and I just fell in love. I'm like, man, I'm going to make more money on this property than I will from my operating business. We owned a gym at the time. And I thought I'd spend 60 hours a week at my business, and I'm going to make more money doing absolutely nothing, owning this piece of land. So we got all the money we had together. We did a VTB, and we were able to get the property bought. And very quickly realized it wasn't passive at all. There was the road that couldn't let down, the water mains were breaking into the ground, kicking out drug dealers. And we spent all of our time, every weekend, every evening there. My wife's water broke, we were at the park, and 2 days later we were there renovating units. Like it was just our whole life. But it felt good because we took this community that was just shit. It was just run down and full of drug dealers, and it was bad. And we turned it into a community, and people were moving new trailers in, they were taking care of their yard. And so it was great, it was cool, and that's how we got started. Very quick, we ended up, we bought a second park at tax auction for 10 grand, and we got it appraised 2 months later for 250,000. And that was just a huge moment for me. So like, that's real money. That's a lot of money if we could sell it for that. And quickly realized we couldn't scale that business. So there's not mobile home parks in small communities are very hard to manage, a bunch of them. In cities, the land that they're on is usually worth more than the park. So it's a tough business to really get scale, and I like scale. So we decided to switch to multifamily. My wife was from Edmonton. We bought our first 8 unit here before we moved, and everything that could have went wrong did on that property. We just pumped money into it. I mean, it had a rental incentive program that guaranteed rents above market. It had guaranteed no vacancy, and within a few months of us taking over, government changed or something happened, and the program got canceled. So we essentially, I mean, it just bled money for about a year, but we had seen with the park you could transition it over, and so we ended up, we bought a second 8 unit, and again, we partnered with someone, we did a VTB to get it done, we didn't have the capital. And it was a similar story, it wasn't a great investment by any means, but we made it work. And in 2020, I'm skipping a lot of years with a short amount of time, so during question period, if you guys have questions on how we did anything, just ask. In 2020, we made the decision, and it was at a conference again, we went down, the guy talked, we had a 5-year plan to move, and he talked about, he said, if you're not in a spot where you feel you can grow or move, you're not a tree. He's like, just get up and go. And on the way home, me and my wife were like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we waiting 5 years just spinning our wheels? So we went home, listed our gym, it sold instantly. And for us, luckily, the day we sold it was the first wave of COVID, the first 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So had we waited even a month, we would have probably been bankrupt. And we sold our house. The guy that bought our house is kind of funny. He came back the next day, or the girl that bought it, her dad came. And he said, look, I don't want to buy furniture for my daughter. I want to buy all your furniture. So I'm like, sure, we don't have to move it. He wrote us a check. And he came back the next day. He said, I want everything. He said, leave food in the fridge, leave the plates. He said, I don't want to put anything. So we moved here. We had our kids and our clothes. And we were right. That was right during the first COVID wave. And it was eerie. We drove down the Henday. We passed 2 cars the entire time. It was just a weird vibe. And we got to the city. We had money. We had no backup plan. We had some money from selling the gym, so we needed to buy our first property. And that helped us in a way I could have never guessed, because nobody else was in the market. The first property we bought, the other company had left hard money on the table, walked away. It had been under contract. And we couldn't view units because of the restrictions. And so we ended up buying it. There was supposed to be 2 vacant out of 27 townhomes. And it turns out there were 7. So we were 35% vacant. And it was just us again. So it was me and my wife. We'd bring our kids every day in the playpen. We'd renovate the units. And they grew up in the sawdust and the paint. And that's how all of our kids' pictures are, which is, in hindsight, fun. Not so much when you're doing it. But we bought that property. We ended up buying a second property, and it was the same situation. There was someone had left money on the table and walked away. Like, there was a lot of fear at that time. It was very hard to lease things up because people wouldn't move out and they wouldn't come for showings. So it's just a different time. But in hindsight, we should have bought everything. Interest rates were 1.8%. Cap rates were way over 5%. And it was just like everything we bought then, it just exploded since then. But at the time, it felt scary and didn't feel like the thing to do. When we bought the third property, that's the first time we ever actually took outside capital. So we set up the fund that we have today. It's a limited partnership. And we brought in outside capital, and that was a 96-unit building. And we rolled the other properties in. We wanted to wait till we had something we could show people, like, here's what we've done. Here's the renovations we do. And here's where we can get the rents. And you could prove that you could manage it. So we did that. Since then, we bought a couple hundred units inside that fund. We have 180 under contract now. And we've grown it, and it's been a lot of fun. We get to grow the people and that work in the company and the brand. And I love every part of real estate. And I tell the story to show there's no way you could, starting out, have drawn that on a plan. I never would have thought we're going to start here and buy this, and COVID's going to happen, and it's going to be the best, for our business, the best thing that ever happened for us. And everything. When interest rates were at their absolute peak, we bought, at the time, it was the biggest property we'd bought. And I remember thinking that I'd seen the guy pull up who was looking at it before me, and he owned the brokerage that we use. They do billions and billions a year. And I'm like, and I outbid him. And I just thought, man, maybe I'm the idiot. Like, why am I paying this and nobody else will? That property today, we put about $1.1 million into it when we bought it for the down payment. I'm looking at buying the building next to it right now. It's worth about $6 million more. They're identical properties. So at the time, there's fear, and it seemed like the worst time to buy. And then in hindsight, it's not, right? So right now, there's a little bit of fear. We have 3 properties under contract. I don't think I'd have them if people were super optimistic about the future. So when you're starting out, it's always going to feel scary, and nobody knows what they're doing on the first one, or when you switch from single family to multifamily. And it's always scary, but that doesn't go away. Like, you feel that now. We've never taken over 3 properties on the same day. So I have the same thought now, right? It's like, this is scary. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I shouldn't be buying all this. But in hindsight, it works out, and you have to just, I guess, get started, right? You have to do the first deal. It's like swimming. You can read all the books on swimming you want, but until you get in the water, you don't know what it feels like to be floundering or drowning. And I think, so yeah, just to get started is so important. And I don't know what my time is, but I'll leave you here with, we're good. So yeah, you can have the idea. The idea can be real estate, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. There's thousands of companies that do what we do, or what somebody else does, right? You can invest passively. You can do what works, and you can take from those companies. One of the things that inspired me when I was starting out, is I read when Avenue Living hit $1 billion. I'm like, that's unreal. They started in Brooks, Alberta with 30 units, and they got to $1 billion quick. Now they're at 7. Now, do I like everything they do, or would I copy their model? No, right? But I can take the things that work, the things that I like. And there's so many people that you can learn from, and you don't have to take everything they do, right? Main Street has a model, maybe not the best reputation, but there's all these companies. You can look at what worked for them, what didn't, what you want to do. So that's the idea. The plan, it can be fluid, right? Like, the thing that stayed the course for us was, it was always buy and hold. When we wanted to flip a house and buy one, we were going to hold those houses. It turned into a trailer park. We held that. It turned into multifamily, and then bigger multifamily, but it was always long-term buy and hold. And I think if you stick to a plan long enough, you guys, I know some of you have been to a lot of these events, and you'll see people, they start out, they're flippers, and then they're something, and it's always changing, right? It's just changing with the flavor. And I think if you stick with one thing for long enough, that's when you can become an expert in it and kind of build your company around that. So I think I'll leave you with this. Buying one piece of real estate really can change your life. It sounds silly and cliche, but it's like you'll almost never meet someone that says, like, man, I wish I didn't buy all those rentals 20 years ago, right? Because it's always, you get appreciation, you get cash flow, and it's not always going to be perfect and go straight up, but one piece really can. That can change your life over 20 years. You put a couple together, that might change you and your family's life, right? And it's not hard. Like, that's what I would say about what we've done, is no harder than trying to buy 10 units. It's just different. You have different things, but the actual getting the debt is way easier today on 30 or 40 million than it is on a small property. So you can put, if that's what inspires you, or you want to go big, do it. And that'll change generations of your life. So I think you just got to start with one. And that's, I think it's so important. You get involved with that first deal. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shane. I think so far, the one thing that stood out is at the very beginning, Shane said, you don't have to be smart. And that speaks directly to me, because I'm probably not the smartest person here by any means whatsoever. But what I loved is he was talking about how if you're not smart, setting up goals, that is such a strong framework for anyone's life. And so I'm going to put a little bit of a plug. We have another event coming up later this week for goal setting. Come talk to me afterwards, and I'd love to help set a framework up for you of how to set goals, as well as we are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this. So if you pull out your phone right now, I'm going to give you my cell phone number, but you can actually text 587-447-3751. Text in your questions. We're not going to be doing hands up and running around, because my cardio isn't the greatest and I don't want to run the mic around the room. But we have some more speakers coming up. Rasha and Katie are all the way here from Ontario. Bryce, why don't you share a little bit about Rasha and Katie?
So Rasha and Katie, they're from Ontario. And they've funded nearly $1 billion. Andrew's like, oh, you should do the pinky, like, $1 billion worth of mortgages. And they can get CMHC MLI Select financing, which is the 5% down financing, in 4 to 5 weeks. Whereas typically, the average person is 4 to 5 months. Sorry, 3 to 4 months. So they're significantly faster. The reason being is they have an ex-CMHC underwriter on their team. They went on their own and they're like, ooh, you should come join our team. And so now they have insider information. One of the banks, the file came back so quickly, the bank's like, wow, we're going to take our time. It usually doesn't come back this fast. And it's like, what? It's because it's filled out perfectly. So they're going to come up and share about this. The best thing that's happened to multifamily financing in the last 40 years, in my opinion. So welcome up, Rasha and Katie.
Well, this is going to be a little bit tricky because we have lots of slides with lots of info and we don't see them this way. Okay. Can everybody read the info on the slides? Okay, good stuff. So, Rice, thank you for that intro. I feel like you make us sound like a bigger deal than we are, so hopefully we don't disappoint. We are from Ontario. We're super excited to be here. We actually flew in middle of the week. I closed on some properties in Leduc this week under the MLI program. Rasha also owns properties in Leduc that she purchased over a year ago under the program. So we are very familiar with how it works, all the paperwork required, the nitty-gritty details of it, because it is a lot. So let's just put that out there so that if everyone wants easy financing and really fast financing, you're not going to be doing MLI Select. If you want 95% loan to value, you want a 50-year amortization, and you're willing to give us every paper you've ever touched in your whole life, we'll help you out.
Yes. I don't even know if this is on, right? Okay,
you're good.
Cool. Thank you. So Katie is right. Yeah, we came down this week to close on MLI Select, her property. I always like to, we don't know who wrote this quote, but I always like to talk about how not knowing and not educating yourself, and if you're scared of wanting to learn more, you will miss out on opportunity. So I'm a mortgage broker. I've been doing this. I've been in the industry for 26 plus years. I started in 1999 with doing residential homes in Ontario, helped many homeowners purchase their homes, their real estate properties. And just recently, Katie and I are both part of Keyspire members. I'm not sure if you guys know who Keyspire is, but we learned a lot through Keyspire. And one of the things that we learned was MLI Select. This was going back like approximately 2.5 years ago. And it was like a new chapter in my life. I actually was planning my plan to retire. And when this happened, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that yet. I met Katie, and we started our niche product now is MLI Select. And that's pretty much all we do. We talk to investors and we plan it out. And planning is so important because if you don't plan it right, and if you don't educate yourself, and if you don't keep learning, and if you don't sleep, eat, breathe it, you're not going to succeed. You have to make sure you're doing the right thing to follow that plan.
Yeah. So we got to get going on our slides. We have a lot of them.
Sorry.
We have a lot of info. We got time. On to the next. Okay. Oh, that got cut off. That's okay. All right. So has anyone heard that you have to put a minimum of 20% down to buy commercial properties? Right? Has anyone heard that you can only own 5 units under your personal name? Right? Has anyone heard that the max amortization you can get is 30 years? Right. But then Rasha, how did you buy 16 doors in one day?
So this is what I did. I met Angela at a Keyspire conference, and we were visiting all these booths, and we were learning about MLI Select, and we were sitting next to each other. Actually, my husband was right in the middle of us, and we're trying to talk. And then we decided to buy 8 homes together under the CMHC MLI Select product. And that's when I started to learn more about it as a mortgage broker. And I said, we can do this. 5% down, 50-year amortization. Our cash flow, Angela and I today, is about $3,200 a month. And we're doing nothing. I got a call from our property manager about a week ago, and she said, Unit 113 is leaving on May 30th or 31st, and new person's coming in June 1st. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Perfect.
That's the amount of work that we do. I like to get more involved too in real estate. I own more than MLI Select, but yes.
We gotta keep going.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, Rasha, that's enough the whole time, I think. Okay. As Shane mentioned, we have a housing crisis. Who knew, right? Hasn't been all over the news for the last 5 years. More than that, let's not kid ourselves. This is how MLI Select came about, right? We know it's a government-backed program. The government recognized that there was a housing shortage and wanted to create not only more housing, but more affordable housing. We also know that the government wants to make things more energy efficient. So they thought, hey, let's bake some of that in here too, right? So they came up with the MLI Select program.
Yep. So the MLI Select program has 3 pillars: the affordability, the accessibility, and the energy efficiency. And I think you had a little bit too much wine, Katie.
Oh no. Oh yeah, I did. My bad. One of those should say affordability.
Yeah.
We'll fix that for next time. Promise.
Yes. So affordability, accessibility, and energy efficiency. And what works in Alberta and Edmonton and Leduc and all these areas is really the affordability. And properties are based on points. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I show the matrix later.
Yeah, beautiful. And you can go up to 95% loan to value, 50-year amortizations. And the reason why I like to say up to 95%, because not always does it always work out to be 95%. When we talk to our clients and we go over the calculations with them, sometimes we'll look at a property and we'll see that the loan sizer, the DSCR, does not work at 95%. So if anybody out there and you see all those ads and it says 95% loan to value, 5% down, we quickly take those numbers, put them in, and we're like, no, it doesn't work. So it's really important to make sure that it works.
So what you need to know about the program, it not only works for new purchases of existing properties or new build properties, it does work well for those, but it also can be used for construction. So you can do up to 95% of the cost during construction. You can do a draw mortgage under the program. However, if you do conventional lending during the build, what you can do is after the build is complete and you get the new appraisal and it's stabilized, then you can do 95% of the value. So at that point, you're going to be pulling out your whole investment and basically owning this with zero of your own capital still tied up in it. Of course, that's a longer process, definitely worth it. Also, you can refinance under this program. If you talk to 99% of mortgage brokers and you say there's an insured mortgage where you can refinance, they're going to tell you it's a lie. They're going to tell you that's fraud. They're going to tell you the person talking about it didn't know what the crap they were saying. I can tell you, you absolutely can do this. You can get a CMHC insured mortgage up to 95% of the value of a multi-unit residential property you already own. Now you're going to take that and go buy another one at 95% loan to value. It's the best. Your turn.
So qualifying, it's a point system. When you look at it, it's a little bit confusing, okay? This is why you need somebody that knows how to read it. I look at it sometimes and I'm like, man, why did they make it so hard to read, you know? So property point system, the borrower net worth is very important. In the first 5 minutes of a conversation when somebody calls, I always ask them, what is your net worth? And sometimes I feel bad asking that, but it's really the most important part of the whole project. If you don't have 25% net worth of the loan amount that you're purchasing, so if the mortgage amount is going to be $4 million, you have to have a net worth of $1 million. That could be in RSPs, investments, TFSAs, other properties, and so forth. Liquidity is important. Credit score. Do you follow Facebook pages where a lot of these posts say credit is not important? Yeah.
Wrong. CMHC cares about your credit. They're going to ask us about things.
Yeah, it needs to be 5 units or more. I've seen properties out there where it says it qualifies for CMHC, and I'm like trying to look at the property. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't qualify. It's not 5 doors or more. And the timeline is very slow. So the expectation of this with CMHC, if you're buying residential homes, yes, CMHC approves a deal within sometimes minutes. Okay. But if you're buying multifamily homes, it can take 4 weeks, 5 weeks, even months. And deal packaging. So deal packaging is very important, making sure that how you submit the deal right from the get-go is important because, and this is why we have a CMHC consultant on our staff that we've scooped her up. She quit CMHC as an MLI underwriter because it was really overwhelming for her, and now she's our underwriter. And the reason why we get fast approvals from CMHC is because we have her submit the application to CMHC. First of all, they know her name. And when they see her file, and they've got 15 files, and they see her name, who do you think what files is going to get picked up? Right? It's going to be really easy to look at that file, ask a few questions, and then here's your approval.
Yeah, so we can't control how long we wait in the line. Everyone waits in line. It's like being at Wonderland. Oh, we're in Alberta. You don't go to Canada's Wonderland. It's like, what's around here? Wally World? I don't know. What's your amusement park? It's like, okay. It's like being there. Everybody's got to wait in line. But you know what? Once our deals get to the front of the line, because they are packaged exactly how CMHC wants them, there's no back and forth. It's a quick yay or nay. And actually, our underwriter also told us that internally at CMHC, they have senior analysts and then newer analysts. And senior analysts are allowed to approve deals based on just the deal summary. They don't even necessarily need to dive into the nitty gritty if they are at that level. So a senior analyst would see one of our packages, see that it's come from this girl who they know previously worked there, and be like, oh, this is an easy check on my calendar today, right? Because they all have quotas. They have deals that they have to process. So we can't help but wait in line, but when we get to the front, it's much faster. Okay, we got a motor. Sorry. What you need to know about the program. So some of this Rash already talked about, so I'm going to try and fly through it. Qualification criteria is strict, okay? It's a government-backed program. They don't like to make things easy. So there's a lot of hoops to jump through and paperwork to provide, but we're here to help along the way. And we do collect 95% of it up front. Insurance premium is going to be paid by the borrower, added to the mortgage, and that insurance premium that you pay for protects the lender, okay? So it gives them that warm, fuzzy feeling to give you the 95% loan to value and the 50-year AM. So we want those great terms. We need to pay that premium. There's no prepayments to these mortgages. This is a long-term commitment. You have a 5-year or a 10-year term option, and you're in it for the long haul. If you want to sell the property midterm, you need someone who can assume the mortgage. And they're going to have to qualify under all of the rules. So selling the property midterm can be a little bit tricky. And you'll see a lot of properties on the market that have a CMHC mortgage that needs to be assumed, right? And that's why. But if they can qualify, they get to assume it at those great terms. So annual reporting to the lender is required, and that's on utilities, rent roll, insurance, basically to make sure that this property can still carry the loan. If it can't, we might need to mitigate that, maybe re-amortize, maybe they might ask for a lump sum payment, kind of a worst case there. But most of the time we can find other solutions. This is different than most commercial lending and different than most, obviously, residential lending. You don't have to do this, right? So this annual reporting, definitely something new. Where am I? CMHC policy changes can happen at any time. This is biggie. So CMHC comes out with changes every couple of months. Typically there's rumblings in the wings and we hear, oh, this might be coming. And what they normally do is they make it, okay, all the new applications, you need to follow these new rules. But the last time they made a change, they were like, here's these new rules. It's applicable immediately to everybody in the queue and everybody new. Okay, so that was when they took out the blanket mortgages over single family homes, which was so great. Though that's the type of property we both own. Sorry, you can't do that anymore, guys. We got in early, but CMHC changes. We do have a Facebook group. We do have an email group that when CMHC changes come about, we do send out emails about them to try and keep everyone up to speed. So when you're looking at properties and especially if you're considering a potential bridge to CMHC, that's where you would want to kind of take into the risk factor there. You want to make sure that you've got money or you've got a backup plan, that if there's a change that comes about, we've got an option B. If NOI decreases, lender may require a lump sum. Oh, we already talked about that. That's with the annual reporting. Rate fluctuation. So let me just quick talk about rates. Rates are fantastic on this program. You can get a commercial loan for under 4% with a 50-year amortization. So if your property's not cash flowing, there's a problem at that point. But your rate is not actually locked in until about a week or two before closing. And your rate gets quoted based on CMB plus a factor. So it'll be, let's say easy numbers, CMB plus 0.5. And the CMB is doing this right up until your closing day. And then about a week before, total boiler room style, we're like, okay, CMB is where we need it to be. Okay, let's call the client. We're like watching the CMB. We're refreshing our screen. We're calling the lender. It's like, okay, CMB is where we need it to be. The numbers are all going to work. This looks great. We need to lock in. We call the client. Okay, CMB is at 2.97. Your contract rate would be whatever, 3.47. And your numbers will be great. Your cash flow will be this. Do you want us to lock this in? And you're like, yeah, go ahead. Then we get back to the lender. We lock that in normally within a 15-minute window, or it has to refresh. And we have to do the whole thing again. And then you're locked in. If the CMB drops between then and closing, you don't get to go back. But if the CMB goes up, you're laughing. So, I mean, personally, I locked in just 3 days before closing because I only had my occupancy certificates 3 days before closing. And so by the time I closed, the CMB was up 7 bips, like 7 basis points. So, on a multi-million-dollar loan, that adds up. That is how rates happen. It's a little bit much. You don't know what your actual contract rate's going to be until basically a week before closing. What can happen is if the CMB is too high and your loan can no longer DSCR properly, like your debt servicing is out of whack, you may be required to buy down the rate, meaning that's an increase to your closing costs. If that happens, we have seen that happen once, where a client had to put an extra $8,000 down to buy down the rate to keep his lending ratios in line. Laurel?
So we talked about the net worth, the 25%. The liquidity, even if the liquidity is $50,000, CMHC likes it to be a minimum of $100,000. That could be in a home equity line of credit. We get that question asked a lot. 5 years experience is very important for property management and for builders. So if you're going to say that, I managed, even for myself, I had single family homes for a long time, since 2008. When I bought my MLI Select Property Homes, I did not qualify to have the 5-year management experience. You have to have the 5 years in multifamily property management. Credit worthiness, very important. If you have good credit and you've got $100 collection that went to because of the gym, I'm just saying gym, but they want that affects your credit score, and they want an explanation for that. So it is important. Multiple borrowers allowed. So you can have 2 people on there, you can have 10 people on there. And it's really important when you have multiple borrowers, do it in a corp. Don't do it personally. And corporation, trust, personal name. I always advise do it in a corporate name. It's good for tax reasons, good for liability reasons, especially if you're getting into partnerships with multiple people.
Okay, so this is an example of the points matrix. If you were just to Google MLI Select, you can get to this page. It's available online very easily on the CMHC website. So important to note here, there is a different points matrix for existing properties versus new build properties. Remember, this whole program was about creating housing. So the points are a lot easier to get on a new property. Example, if we look under the affordability section, that first section there, this is new construction. In order to get affordability points, you have to make a 10-year commitment of keeping a certain percentage of units under the affordable threshold for that city or town. Okay, there's a guideline on the CMHC website as to what that exact figure is. Here in Red Deer, it's $897.50. Up in Edmonton, it's $1,665. Calgary's $1,137. Like where Rasha lives is $800. Toronto is, I think Toronto's $1,300.
13 and change.
Yeah, it's on the next slide. But anyways, in some cities, that works a lot easier than others, right? You probably have heard and seen that Edmonton is a real hot pocket for MLI Select. That's because of that affordability factor, right? You can easily keep a unit under $1,665 in Edmonton. You cannot keep anything under $1,100 in Toronto and still cash flow, right? So here, if you were buying a new construction property and you needed to get 50 points, you only have to keep 10% of units at that affordable commitment for the 10-year commitment. Okay, so if you're buying a building with 10 doors, you have to just keep one property as the affordable. CMHC doesn't care the square footage of the property. They don't care if that property looks at the dumpster. They don't care if that property is a studio apartment with no bedrooms. It just is one unit that you would need to keep affordable for 10 years. Now, that only gets you 50 points. In new construction, 50 points still gets you 95% loan to value, but it only gets you a 40-year AM. If you Google the MLI Select, I don't have time, I'm sure I don't have time to go into that and show it all to you. Happy to do it on a one-on-one call. If you want to book a one-on-one, we can share our screen, go through the whole points matrix with you and explain the difference between existing and new, because not only is the points collection different, but what those points gets you in terms of terms is also different. Okay, so you can see it on the website. Just happy to help you walk through it or explain it more, but just know it's very different from existing and new. That's kind of what the takeaway is here. God, I will go the right way. Okay. This is the affordability numbers for a few cities across Canada, just to show you how different they are. We've included, okay, so let's start over out west. We've got Vancouver at 1673. And then Chilliwack, I put that on there. That is the highest number in all of Canada for the affordability numbers. It's $2,080. Okay. Then we've got Edmonton and Calgary. Oh, Calgary is 1738. I said 1138. So it's way high in Calgary. We do have a friend that purchased in Calgary. He did 5 units. It was townhouses with 2 suites on the end, so 5 units altogether. Obviously the basement suites are his affordable units. Cash flows really well, easy to rent. It was a great purchase. And then you can see, down here in Ontario, the numbers are not super favorable for newer properties and new purchases. Where these numbers work well in Ontario is for those existing properties that might be, underperforming. But now those underperforming units that have those cheap rents are actually kind of helpful because they're going to help us meet that requirement. And then we can do the refinance up to as much as we can carry with the rents. Probably not 95%. What you need to know about the property. Do you want to do this?
Sure. So 5 units or more, 1 lot or 1 continuous attached structure. So if you can visually kind of see this. So in my case, I had 8 homes and all 8 homes were on their own titles. That is not available anymore. You can't do that. You have to have, it can be all on 1 lot. So you can have 1 lot with multiple units of 5 doors or more, or you can have almost like a row house, like townhomes, on multiple lots. So let's say there's 3 lots and you've got 6 like attached. It's got to be attached from one end to the other. Okay. So let's say there was 6, and there's a 7th one too attached, and you only want to buy the 6. No, you can't do that. You have to buy the whole batch. Okay. So we get that question asked all the time. No minimum square footage, and number of bedrooms. It could be a studio apartment. So you could buy, the one thing that we see is a lot popular is where they take an old house and then they convert it into 5 homes. So you can make one room or one unit a studio apartment. That counts. Points differ between existing and new build. We talked about that.
And then you missed that
The
they
commercial
can have a
component.
commercial
So
component.
the commercial component cannot exceed over 30%. So this is where you see like buildings, and you've got like the apartment buildings up top, and then at the bottom you've got like a daycare or a hair salon. It just cannot exceed square footage wise 30% of the whole project or building.
So this is property types in CMHC's wording. A property must contain at least 5 housing units and must be comprised of one connected building containing at least 5 housing units and which may span more than one legal lot. One legal lot with a combination of dwellings with similar characteristics which collectively contain at least 5 units. Or 2, a housing unit is defined as a self-contained residential dwelling which at minimum includes cooking and bathroom facilities, as well as a separate means of entry. A housing unit may be as small as a single room that contains all of these features. Again, right from CMHC's website, okay? Okay, so this is a little this or that. If you've been listening, it shouldn't be too hard. Which of these 2 properties do you think would qualify for MLI Select? You can point. We've got a 61-unit townhouse complex or a 4-plex. Good job. You want to do the next one?
A triplex in Edmonton or a 6-unit renovation? Oh, good. Yeah.
We've got the 2 units with the addition of a triplex that's attached to it, or we've got a duplex with a large lot and add-on potential. Right now, only that guy qualifies, but you could buy this one. It's got that nice big lot. Now you put some suites in the basement, maybe add one more on. Price like, now you're talking. Then you're going to refinance it later up to 95% of the value and go buy another one. Your turn.
A front back duplex or a new ADU on the lot with a 4-plex. So that's the actual ADU in the back with a 4-plex. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so this one is actually like kind of still a little controversial right now. And this might be a change that soon comes. We're not sure. There's some rumblings. But right now they are still approving new construction of ADUs. Again, they want to be creating affordable housing. So I think that it'll stick around, especially if they're new. But so another quick opportunity, I promise we only have 2 more slides, we're almost done, is infill and development. We touched on this very, very, very briefly earlier. So it's you take the old and make it new. You're going to take a lot or maybe an older home on a lot. Maybe you buy 2 right beside each other. You're going to knock those down. You're going to do an infill situation. So you're going to take that lot that previously housed 1 family. Now we're going to put a multiplex on it and house 5, 6, 8, 12 families, depending on how big the lot is that you were able to get. How would the numbers look for that? Let's say you can get the land for 300. The build cost is 2 million for a total build cost of 2.3. If you did the MLI Select for construction and you're doing loan to cost, you would be able to get a loan amount of 2.185, right? So your total cash in would be 115. Now, if you build it, you stabilize it and hold it for a year and then get it refinanced. I feel like I'm in your picture. You can refinance it up to 95% of the appraised value. Let's say it appraises for 3 million. You can pull out 2.85. So now how much are you in there for? Wait, didn't you just pull out everything? Now you just own this property? Awesome. Huh. This is what a sizer looks like. The top got cut off, but This is what it looks like, and this is what we run through on Google Meet or on Microsoft Zoom calls with people. So if you came to us and you booked a meeting with us, we would ask that you bring the pro forma with you, and we would fill in this sizer. So we would fill in the information all in green. We would ask you how many units, the province it's in, is the building made of wood or concrete? These are the things that matter to CMHC, and these are the things that affect your loan amount. How many appliances are in each unit? We've got rental income, parking income. They do allow you to include parking income. If you've got a covered garage or something that you're going to be renting out for additional income, that can be included. We're going to have to factor in a vacancy rate. And then we have to factor in property taxes, utilities, and insurance. Those are all actuals. Or like if it's a new, we're going to be using the mill rate. And then all those other ones, repairs and maintenance, management, salaries, other costs, replacement reserves, those are all CMHC benchmarks. Those are unavoidable. We have to factor them in. Even if you're not necessarily going to have that personally, CMHC makes us factor those in. Okay. So we factor all that in, and then we go over to the loan summary. This purchase price was 2.25. So we've got 95% of that there. We've got the application fee to CMHC, and then we factored in the loan term of 5 years, an amortization of 50, and a max interest rate of 3.77 for this one. We like to factor in a buffer of about 0.5 because that CMB is going to be doing this until closing day. So we look at what CMB is today. We look at, based on the loan amount and the city, the risk factor that we think the lenders will consider when pricing this loan. And we say, okay, I think today this loan would probably come in at about 3.5. We're going to make sure that the numbers still work at 3.77, just in case on closing, bond is high. We don't want you to have to pay that extra thousands of dollars at the end there to get your loan to fit in. This is actually a rule that CMHC implemented, not last change, the change before, where they said, that submissions need to start factoring in a hedge on the rate. We've always done it that way, but I guess a lot of people were submitting them at exactly the rate, and the DSCR, like, it was just working at the rate of that day. Way too much risk for our liking.
And this is why we had one person actually close and had to pay $1,000 extra, because it jumped a little for them, but thankfully not a lot of people had to do that.
Well, and he had to bridge to CMHC too, so his closing was very long. So when we had to factor in a factor, it was pretty tough. But yeah. So this is what we go through on a call with you. And then we have the little executive overview over there that basically tells you as a borrower what's required of you to make that purchase. We've got the down payment required, the closing cost estimate, the net worth requirement, liquidity requirement. So of that net worth, there's a 10% liquidity factor to that. That's the minimum 100,000 that Rasha was talking about, where after closing costs, after down payment, you need to have a minimum of $100,000 available to you. Okay. That can be in RSPs and TFSAs and a home equity line of credit that's not used. Just because CMHC needs to know that if you have to carry this loan for a little bit, that you're okay for it. And then we also break down what your monthly cash flow would look like. So we can do one of these with you guys in about 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes go to half an hour if we want to talk through different scenarios. Maybe you are like, oh, maybe I'll add a garage or whatever. And we can throw in some different numbers. I think that's the last one. That's it.
Thank you.
That was really good. Thank you very much. Perfect. We're actually going to jump into Q&A shortly. So grab some water, and then we're going to pull you and Shane back up on the stage. If you haven't submitted a question yet, you can text me at 587-447-3751. While our speakers are just getting their waters and are going to come back on stage, I want to just acknowledge that we have Garth at the back. He's set up a table full of books. All the books are $3, so go look through. There's some ones with Trump's face on them, so maybe some fun reading tonight. But all that money is going to be going towards the construction of a community kids play structure on the other side of his parking lot. So if you'd like to join in on that, we'd love to have you a part of that. But I'm going to bring our guest speakers back up on the stage if you're okay with that. Shane, if you want to come back up as well. We've been getting lots of fun questions on here.
And I guess my first question, if that's all right, sorry, we're just going to all play musical chairs around here. My first question to all of you, including Bryce, is you had made mention that you have personal properties, rentals. What is something when you're looking for property for yourself that is a green light, and what's something that's a hard stop? So whoever wants to start, and then we'll just go around.
Yeah, for us, it's honestly a huge part of it's based on the financing. Everything we buy, the whole market is driven by what you can finance. And that's the first thing we look at. Does it make sense numbers wise? We obviously know location, and we're very strict on our criteria. We don't buy super heavy value add. We don't buy new stuff. We buy that in between. We call it stabilized value add. So it's pretty easy. Like, we don't see hundreds of deals a year. We see a couple that would fit that. And then I get, like the broker, I'll just say, after their presentation, like, you don't need to know all this stuff as people. You have brokers to do it. So pay the little bit of a fee and use a broker. And they can do a lot of the work for you, and they'll know much better than I ever would or anybody would.
So I have a question. So we have a couple builders in the room.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to builders who wanted to capitalize on MLI Select?
Can I answer that question? Yeah. So who are the builders in here? Okay. And have you built MLI Select products before or not yet? Not yet. You have? Okay. So I would definitely hook up with a mortgage broker that knows MLI very well, because it's very important to know the intricacies of MLI and how you need to build these properties so that CMHC is happy with the results. And what I mean by that is utility meters, doors, access to getting into the lower unit and the upper unit, sidewalks, pathways, sound, fire rated doors that separate the upper and lower levels. These are all little things that even as a mortgage broker, I shouldn't have to, that's not my job, right? But getting together because we see the questions on the templates, right? When we submit to CMHC, these are all questions that are asked by CMHC. And then there's one final thing that happens before closing. The file gets audited again. And if a question was missed and it is answered wrong 3 days before closing, CMHC can pull. This is why it's important to make sure that the templates are filled out correctly, the builders are doing the right thing for CMHC, and that you understand that the file needs to close on time. It might, so if I say I have a CMHC 6-month expiry date that expires on July 10th, the client is not going to be able to go past July 10th. So we need to close this file by July 10th. So there's a lot more to it, but I feel like these are the most important.
That was a great start. I also think it's important to be mindful that there are really creative solutions out there right now with clients that are willing to work with the builder during the build process and come on early in the process as an early investor to share that capital investment right away. And then everyone gets to benefit when we do the equity takeout at the end. If we do the term, if we do like conventional during the build and then go to CMHC at the end, or you can do right to CMHC during the build too, if you want to. And on your first draw, basically everyone gets to pull out pretty much their investment, depending on how things have gone thus far. But definitely creative solutions that clients are willing to kind of work with you early in the process and take on some of that together.
Because, so do they still have that credit where if you're building the property, you get a 5% GST credit from the federal government? Is that still a thing?
That's not part of this one.
Okay. Yeah.
But different program, you can get 5% back from the government for building. We'll connect you with a lawyer afterwards. Don't worry. Perfect. He's dabbling in being a lawyer, so there we go. We can take that. The next question was, could I get approved with no experience in multifamily rentals, but will have a property manager on my team?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. That would be a requirement. You need to hire a property manager that has 5 years experience. It's an easy one to mitigate.
Perfect. And then for Shane, yourself, when you were starting out, were you looking to gain mentorship from someone, or what did that look like in the beginning stages of your journey?
Yeah, 100%. I looked at just anybody I could. And when I moved to the city, I would just ask like just as many people as I could for meetings and just try to learn from them. For sure, the older people that have been through multiple cycles. The beautiful thing about today is you don't have to pay for a lot of stuff, or, you can spend a lot of time with someone listening to their podcast, right? So I can spend time with Alex or Mosey or all these people every day. Just you can get as much information as you can, and talk to people that have done it. And I 100%, mentorship's been a big part of it for me.
Shane has a podcast.
What's the name of the podcast, Shane?
Scaling Up Apartment Investing.
Scaling Up. Okay, so look that up. What is the standard minimum DSCR on MLI program? And DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. So how much income you have versus the amount of debt that you have.
It's 1.1%. So I don't know if you saw in our we call it our sizer. That sizer showed a 1.16%. So it was higher than the minimum. And let's say the interest rate that we use was 3.77. Let's say we change that to 4%. The 1.16% would have probably dropped to 1.1. So when we're talking to you on our discovery calls, we go over all those numbers and go over what ifs. What if this happened? What if that happened? So to make sure to set expectations and make sure that should things happen differently, that you're protected.
Can I add something?
Of course.
In case there's any other real estate agents in the room, that DSCR can be a really excellent negotiating tool. If somebody's trying to sell a property for say 2 million, but the DSCR doesn't jive at that purchase price based on the current rent roll. Also, if it's fully rented, CMHC will not use projected rents. We have to use current unless you have vacant units. Okay. So if somebody's trying to sell it for 2 million, but the numbers only work at 1.85, you can now go back to the seller and say, listen, we want to buy this, but it doesn't work unless you can sell it to us for 1.85. Here's the math on that. So that can be a really, really like black and white, the numbers don't lie, negotiating tool for you.
That's a really good one.
Shane, have you used MLI on any of your deals within your fund?
Yeah, all the last couple we have. The market in Edmonton right now, that's all the only way deals get done, really. And it's like the brokerage, we use the sellers call them and say, hey, what can you get for debt? And I call them and say, what can I get? And you're always like, that's the beautiful thing about it. You're priced in almost exactly. People can't sell much over. They're not going to sell much under. So you know what it's going to come in at, and it'll be a couple $1,000s a unit off on you in the next bid.
Very good. I love it. Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball. If I were to ask this question to Bryce, he's going to say, my crystal ball isn't working today. But if you did have a crystal ball and you can make some predictions for you two, what do you think potential changes to the CMHC MLI Select program would be? Shane, for you, what changes do you expect in the Edmonton market within this next year? Then Bryce, for yourself, what changes do you expect in the Red Deer market? So whoever wants to take that first.
Okay. I think because CMHC right now is really asking about meters and utility, when they ask a lot of questions about one certain thing or two things, some rumblings are happening, right? So they're asking how the utilities are being collected, who's collecting them. So we had a person that called us and said, my deal is not closing on time because the way it was submitted to CMHC, the tenant was going to collect the utilities. So the name was going to go on the tenant's name on the upper level. And then he was going to collect, or like whoever collect the utilities from the lower level. CMHC does not allow that. The deal was not going to close. So it had to be reorganized, restructured, resubmitted. Thank God CMHC looked at it again, and it ended up closing. So utilities is very important. I think in the future, what might happen is they might ask that they want separate meters. And if this happens, I really think that's going to happen because of the questions that they're asking. And if you think about before the single family homes got wiped out of the equation, there were questions being asked about, are the single family homes like next to each other? Was there a driveway in the middle? Is there a pathway? So when they were asking all these questions, you knew rumblings were going to happen. So
It's really good. Thank you very much. Shane.
Well, I'll say, I think the reason they're asking all the questions, it's on our side. I mean, that's a loophole people use all the time. You're locked into a certain rate, and then if you can bill back through RUBS or something, and that one of the biggest landlords there told me the other day is like, follow us. He's like, all us big guys are doing it. You guys may as well too. So they'll start, because that's kind of a hack. Obviously, people do it with parking. You're locked in at this rate. All of a sudden, you charge $200 for parking. And CMHC obviously sees people doing that and doesn't want them to. So they're probably closing that. Think change is coming. I think the RUBS and separate metering. You can't separate meter water on most old buildings the way the water comes in. So you do it through RUBS, which is they just take the amount that the building uses and you spread it out. That's becoming more and more common. I think we'll see that continue for the year. And then anything you can sub-meter, I think will happen for sure. As far as like big market changes, I never try to guess it or try to time the market. I really don't know. I think we'll continue to see, we're still so affordable in Edmonton compared to anywhere else. I think we still see rents come up and people coming there because it's so affordable, but that can change in a second. So
there was a builder in town years ago, and he would spend a little bit extra when he would build these apartment buildings. So he would condo them. So if we're adding separate utility meters to this, is that a strategy where you could spend a little bit extra, condo it, and then one of your exit plans is eventually selling it off individually?
If I could go back to my 8 properties, like 8 homes, I would have done separate meters. I would have added air conditioning because we would have won the tenant over other properties. Our property would have been more unique. There's a few things I would have done differently. And yeah, I think so.
You can condo them as an exit strategy later because they would be attached still in terms of getting the financing. But again, you wouldn't be able to sell them off until your CMHC loan.
So at the 10-year mark?
Yeah, matures. And then you would potentially, unless you are selling them all and closing them all on the exact same day, you would need to find some sort of conventional lending so that you have flexibility to sell them off at that point.
And on that there's lots that goes into it. We're dealing with this right now. We bought condos and deconverted them, and we're buying one right now. The biggest problem is insurance about double on a condo versus an apartment in Edmonton, and your taxes are about 10 to 20% more in an apartment building. So you have to outweigh that. The mill rate's different. The value they're going to use your purchase price, they look at it differently. So I'm looking at it. My insurance on this building's 20 grand more, but I'm going to save 35 in taxes. So you just have to make that decision. Condos are a huge pain. You have I hate them.
Hard pass.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I also noticed that Bryce skipped my question I asked him, so I'm going to ask again. Bryce, if you had a crystal ball in Red Deer, what would you predict over the next year?
Calgary. So we always follow Calgary and Edmonton. So whatever happens there, about a year later happens to us. So in Calgary right now, rents are coming down slightly. So I actually think for us, we'll stay about the same right now, which is pretty awesome because last year we increased by 30%. So make sure you increase your rents when they come up for renewal. But so we'll stabilize, and then they dropped a little bit, but I'm not sure if we will.
Yeah, no, that's really good insight. I'm getting quite a bit of questions about net worth. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what that actual looks like. Could I throw in my ATV? Can I throw in my personal property? Like how do I actually calculate net worth?
Yeah, so that's actually the very first step we do with people when they come on a discovery call with them is we go through the net worth form, which we did put a stack of those at the back. So if you want to calculate your net worth, because your net worth determines your budget in the MLI world, sometimes if your net worth is your holdback, though, you can bring on a partner that has a lot of net worth. So there are, again, solutions for everything. Assets must be held in Canada. So if you've got $500,000 in a German bank account, can't use it, move it to Canada, let it sit here for 90 days, and then we can talk. because we have to show 90 days history of assets. So yeah, RRSPs, some lenders take them at full value. Some lenders make us discount them by 50%. You can use accessible cash on a HELOC. So that can be on your primary residence or any properties that you own. Obviously, if you are a partial owner of the property, we can only use the partial equity position that would be yours. Stocks. You can't use, these are literal things that we've had people ask us about. You cannot use artwork. You cannot use vehicles. You cannot use swords.
Shoot, I'm out.
I know. Yeah, can't. Sorry. Yeah, crypto. Like a guy had just like a jump drive and was like, I got $4 million worth of crypto on here. No, that was a hard pass. No, unless it's like held in a Wealth Simple account, then it can possibly like a legitimate account. Then it can possibly be considered, and they may even require you to move it into a cash bank account and show that it's sitting there. I mean, after the fact, you can move back if you want, but that might be a requirement. Okay. Any other weird? I know we've had art.
I think the important factor here is CMHC is Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. It's the government. Okay. So if your money is in a crypto wallet, government's not going to like that, right? If you, so yeah, that'll change the crypto wallet.
He also has a crystal ball, so who knows what might be out there.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's great news for people that have crypto wallets. But like for now, you really have to be careful and think like the government. I always tell my clients, if you were the government, how would you think? Would you accept this? Right. So, yeah.
No, that's really good. I know that we're coming to a close here, but I'm wondering if you can share just one last tidbit of if you were someone that maybe you have a couple rental properties and you're looking to scale up to that next spot, what should you do? What should you invest in? What does that look like for someone in this market today?
I mean, I would start off with a discovery call, calculate your net worth, and then come up with a plan where we can maybe get you the largest down payment you have available to you. So possibly refinancing some of these properties you already own to really build that nest egg that we can then apply to your next purchase and then maximize the number of doors that you can get.
Awesome. Shane?
Yeah, I think make a plan that works for you and be very clear on it. Like if you go to a realtor and say, yeah, I want to get into bigger real estate, send me some deals. They're not going to take you serious or know what you're looking for.
Right.
It's different. It's a smaller market here for sure, but be specific. Say, I'm looking for this. I have the money to buy between 10 and 15 units. You know, maybe we could go a little above, a little below. We want to buy 1980s vintage wood frame walk up. These are the only neighborhoods we'll look at. Here's where we have the money from. Like that's what, when I came here, we bought our first building from Qualico. They didn't want to sell to us because they didn't know who we were. And we were the only bidder, the only offer there. We had to write a resume that said like, we own trailer parks, we manage properties. Here's the money. We can show we have the money and like all this stuff. So you have to be taken seriously. You know, maybe you're not from real estate. You just say, hey, I run a business. This is how I think it translates. Here's my money. Here's how I want to do it. And I think, you know, you go talk to a realtor, they'll take you a lot more serious and send you the deals that you can actually buy. They're not sending you 200 units or 2 units. They'll send you the ones you want. And I think that goes a long ways.
That's excellent.
Well, thank you for, actually, go ahead.
I always sit with I've been doing this for a long time, 26 years. And about 10 years ago, I started to draw up a plan with every client of mine, especially if they're investors. So I sit down and I draw boxes. I literally draw the boxes. And I put where their investments are. Are they in RSPs? Are they in the bank? Are they under their mattress? Where is your money? Where are your assets? Are they in real estate? Okay. And then I ladder them up. And what I mean by that, like for example, I have a critical life insurance policy that comes due in 13 years. If I don't claim anything on it, it pays me back all the premiums that I've put into that policy. It's about $900 a month times 15 years. So, okay, 12 months times 15, do the math. It's about $170,000. So I laddered my investments, my real estate, my insurance policies, everything. I know when they're all coming due. And then what am I going to have if everything goes well? And I always use conservative numbers when I'm 55, when I'm 60, when I'm 65. Hopefully I live to 80. So I do that with all my clients. And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a mortgage broker. But like when I do that with them, a lot of clients tell me my financial advisor doesn't do it with me.
Right.
So when you do that and you sit with them and then you plan real estate, they love it.
Yeah.
They're like, they didn't know they could do this.
Yeah, that's a lot of good
So,
wisdom. Thank you for sharing
yeah.
that. But let's give a hand to all of our guest speakers. Thank you all very much for sharing your wisdom. You're good to go. You are free. I know that we didn't get to everyone's question, and so we're going to have some time afterwards for some networking. You can talk with these speakers, exchange business cards, because I know that they have a wealth of wisdom that they want to instill to each and every one of you, as well as make some good connections. We have some more events coming up as the year progresses. The next big one that we have coming up is June 21st, and that is going to be having Ken Dunn, who is a Canadian real estate icon. He's doing tons of work in Ontario with some cabins, as well as we have a mystery guest speaker. So if you have any predictions of who the mystery guest speaker is, you can send them our way, and I will tell you, I don't know, because Bryce is keeping it a mystery from me as well. Any hints?
We have someone in the works, but if they're not available, then we'll have someone else. That's why it's a mystery.
Okay. With all of that said, I want to encourage you to follow Bryce on social media. He's constantly sharing great information about our local markets, what's going on, as well as you can follow the Central Alberta Real Estate Investor Network to find out more information about more upcoming events, because there's lots that are brewing in the horizon. So we're really excited for that. But thank you all for attending.
And there's still snacks, so spend some time, network, and thanks for being a part of the Central Alberta Real Estate Investor Network.